First of all, thanks, Joel, for the tips on the iPad presentation. Yeah, I'm completely copying, and then, you know, I'll also say some negative things and blah, blah, blah. So, so welcome, everybody. My name is Ben Miller. Contact information is up there at Ben Sniff Wi-Fi on Twitter, Ben at Sniff Wi-Fi email, and Sniff Wi-Fi is a blog that I do on wireless sniffing. How do I get the, okay, good. And so if you look on the schedule, the original topic was going to be surveying without using site survey software, which I still think is useful. I'll try to get to it briefly at the end here. But I wanted to talk a little bit about ghost frames because it's a broader site surveying topic. It was a topic, those of you that follow the WLPC hashtag on Twitter might have seen some talk about it. Me and Peter McKenzie and Kimberly Graves and GT Hill and Devin, we talked about it a bit yesterday. So I just wanted to talk about it a little bit to talk about what I see as its importance for site surveying. And the idea of a ghost frame is, you know, it's just like a ghost. A ghost is something you can't see, but that is haunting your, you know, your house. A ghost frame is a wireless frame that you can't see, but that is, you know, haunting, I'm putting in quotes, your Wi-Fi. And what I mean by haunting is it's using channel time. So it's a frame that is uncapturable. You won't be able to get a reading of it in Ekahau. You won't be able to get a reading of it in whatever else, a Wireshark capture, an AirTool capture. Even using one of the free scanning tools, the Airport Utility, you won't be able to see this frame, but it is eating up channel time. And, you know, I'll kind of describe why that is and then talk a little bit about why that's important for surveying. So the reason why the ghost frame exists is because the standard header for the 802.11 standard is a 6 megabit per second header. The way any Wi-Fi radio works, whether it's an access point or a client device, is that the client device always is listening for the 6 megabit per second modulation. That's assuming that it's 802.11 AG, NRAC. That doesn't apply to 802.11b. So your Wi-Fi radio is always listening at 6 megabits per second so that it can hear this physical layer header, and then the physical layer header indicates what the rate will be for the rest of the frame. The MAC layer header, the frame body, that will be sent or that will be received at a variable rate. So my iPad here, listening at 6 megabits per second, it hears a physical layer header at 6 megabits per second, and inside that 6 megabit per second header, my iPad learns that it needs to tune itself to 52 megabits per second to receive the MAC layer header and the data. And the issue we have with this, it's kind of the second sub-bullet there on my little list of bullets. The issue we have there is that the 6 megabit per second header travels further than any other higher rate. So you kind of get a larger boundary of where the frame is traveling to. But the problem with that is that we can only capture a frame if we are able to capture the MAC layer header and the frame body. If I was running a capture tool on this iPad here, if there was a frame that was sent somewhere in here and my iPad was able to hear that physical layer header, if it was able to hear that 6 megabits per second, but if it was unable to hear the rest of the frame, if it was unable to hear the MAC layer header and the frame body, that frame would simply not show up in my capture. But the issue with that is that the frame is still eating up channel time. It's mentioned here in the kind of fourth bullet point down, it's a sub bullet point, that the physical layer header has a field called the length field that indicates how long the rest of the frame is going to take. It indicates how long the MAC layer header and how long the data is going to take that follows the physical layer header. And devices and access points listen to that. Devices and access points stay quiet. It's part of the CCA, the Clear Channel Assessment. Devices and access points stay quiet for whatever amount of time the physical layer header tells them to stay quiet for. So the end result of that is my iPad may be hearing a 6 megabit per second physical layer header. My iPad may be seeing the length field in that physical layer header and staying quiet for a certain amount of time. That physical layer header may essentially be eating up channel time, but there may be no way for me to capture that. There may be no way for me to know that that frame exists. And there's kind of definitely an honest debate about that for production Wi-Fi, whether you should be concerned about ghost frames for your actual production network, or whether the ghost frame phenomenon is something that's not really worth concerning yourself over. But I would definitely say that making sure that you avoid ghost frames during the survey process is something that, in my view at least, really shouldn't be without controversy. That if you're doing any type of surveying, if you're in the design stage, if you're in the validation stage, even if you're just doing troubleshooting, even if you're just doing little spot checks to try to figure out why areas might be having problems with Wi-Fi, I really believe that you want to make sure that your minimum data rate that's available is the 6 megabit per second data rate. If you don't have that 6 megabit per second data rate available, you're just kind of losing out on the ability to see traffic. It's I'll try to diagram out kind of what I'm talking about here. The idea that I'm talking about, hopefully, if it wasn't clear already, if I have an access point over here and that access point is on channel number 44, if that access point, let's say, has 18 megabits per second MBR, when that access point transmits, there's going to be some type of boundary out here where I'll be able to capture. So the 18 megabit per second boundary is where I'm able to capture. But the issue just comes in that the physical layer header is always going to be 6 megabits per second. It's going to go beyond that boundary some distance, 6 megabit per second header. And it's kind of that area in the middle. This area in the middle, that's the area where the ghost frames can become a problem. So the main thing about it is just when you're trying to do a site survey of some type, if you want to get precise information about where the access point is covering, if you're worried about what we commonly call co-channel interference, if you're worried about the idea of having more than one access point operating on channel 44 at the same time or on any other channel at the same time, the only way you're going to get accurate information about that is if you have the 6 megabit per second data rate enabled, if you have the lowest possible OFDM data rate enabled. If you decide you want to turn it off during production, that's a separate issue. I know a lot of folks recommend turning off the low rates during production. It's not necessarily something I believe in, but that's kind of a separate thing. I realize there's some nuance there. But I'm just saying that during your survey process, when you're planning out the network or when you're validating it or even just for troubleshooting, I really strongly recommend configuring those access points for the 6 megabit per second data rate. That's the presentation I have on ghost frames. I wanted to make sure I left a little bit of extra time in case there's any questions or anything like that or comments. Are there?
No questions on 10 Talks.
On what, sorry?
No questions on 10 Talks.
Oh, got it. No questions on 10 Talks, sorry.
You got a minute and a half left.
Well, I'll spend the last minute then just mentioning really quickly kind of what I was going to talk about before I had the discussion about ghost frames yesterday. Just saying that there are great free Wi-Fi scanning tools available for any operating system, and that if you are looking to do some type of site surveying and for whatever reason, budgetary reasons or what have you, or maybe you find that the results you get from the site survey software are varying a little bit from the results that the real devices are getting. You see a RSSI of -65 in the survey software, RSSI of -70 in the real device. So you're trying to get something that's coming from the real device. These are all free Wi-Fi scanners. On Apple iOS, it's a little bit tricky because the airport utility does not show you your BSS ID. So that's the one operating system where I really need 2 applications to do a proper survey. But those are all free tools. And the last little thing I want to mention here, my last 15 seconds, is one of the things I really like about using these tools is I'm using an accurate antenna. You know, different antenna shapes, different antenna placement can mean different reception properties. And when you use these free tools on a real device, you can use a real antenna. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben.